Setting up our YouTube meeting. All right. Hi, everybody, and welcome back. Welcome, Phil Nagy and Kit Nagy here. We are about halfway, a little less than halfway through the first round of the NFL draft. Just wanted to kind of cut this first round in half because we're going to jump on right before the Browns go on the clock. But we're going to get some instant reaction here, Nagy on Sports Style. So Kit's been hard at work breaking down these picks. He and I have been chatting feverishly about them as well. So welcome for those of you joining us. Always great to be on with the peeps here. Kit, how are we doing tonight? Here's Jenny. She's excited too for the draft.
I'm doing great. Looks like Jenny's doing well too. Awesome to have the dogs in the dog pound cheering for the Browns. And
we always hear her on my mic sometimes when she barks at people outside.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, so obviously 1-2 win as everybody expected, even though you and I have talked and other people have talked that they thought Justin Fields was by far the second best quarterback in the draft. He ends up slipping all the way until 11. We'll get there in a minute. So how about we'll talk about top five, Kid? Any real surprises for you in those first five picks, which were Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, QBs all straight off the board, and then Pitts and Jamar Chase to the Bengals. Floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's really any great surprises in there. If anybody was surprised, it was probably those who believed the Mac Jones hype that he was somehow the number 3 pick. I think we saw over a month of solid mocks that had nothing but Mac Jones, which to me was always if at least a mystery. Certainly it definitely a head scratcher at a minimum, but like it just felt wrong. It didn't seem like the guy. It felt like at best you're getting a guy that doesn't have the injury history that might be a little bit of an slight upgrade, a newerish model of the same car. I mean, it's like Garoppolo plus a little. You're not getting any kind of like. If you're going to trade all that value, you would think a guy with serious ceiling is where you want to go. And so that's, to me, why it felt like it had to be Fields or it had to be Lance. Yeah. Obviously, the answer was Lance. They want to groom him somewhat behind Garoppolo, which I think is absolutely, a smart move on their part, because you don't want to start Trey Lance right now. He just doesn't have enough experience. And he's a guy that, although he's got this great ceiling, if you throw him out there right now, that'll destroy him. He will have a terrible career if you think he's going to start right now. So no, I think that was absolutely a good pick for them, and has the potential. Now they have to do the right things with him and develop him the right way. But if they do, he could be a great quarterback in this NFL, and very interesting. I think today in particular was very interesting with all the stuff going on before this particular draft. Talk about Rodgers trade, talk about all kinds of bizarre stuff.
Very bizarre.
Very odd day today, but interesting nonetheless. And then ironically, it ends up going kind of, vanilla, almost like you would kind of expect it to go, just considering what they traded to get there and, what that would probably mean. A ceiling guy, not necessarily the highest floor guy, which is what Mac Jones currently represents. And we've already kind of talked about that. Obviously, the 1, 2, 3 for the first two were just straight. I mean, it was known. I don't necessarily agree with 2, but that's the way it went. And that was a known deal, and we'll see what he does.
They locked on to him early for sure.
Yeah, they did. And like I said, I think they're hoping he's going to be Mahomes, and I wish them luck. I don't think that's
but he also reminds me a lot, and because it just kind of looks like that, he looks a lot like Jimmy Clausen to me.
Yeah.
Hopefully you get the first one. So we'll see. Okay, so and I heard an interesting stat. I've been watching NFL Network. I know you've been watching ESPN because of your hotel room situation. They were talking about that the last, I don't know how many it was, 3 to 4 starting quarterbacks that won the Super Bowl averaged between like 1,200 and 1,500 pass attempts during college, and
Right.
Trey Lance has 300 in his entire
Right.
college career. So they're just saying like he's super raw, definitely drafting traits and what you hope you can turn into something. But it's just like dude just hasn't played a lot of football, and it
That's
was
right.
at North Dakota State.
Right.
So it's really
Right.
hard to. I don't know. For me, it feels like it might be hard to get the fan base to buy in on that. But you're right. You have the luxury of not having to start him from day one, and
Well,
letting him bide his time.
right. No, I mean, actually, I don't know that you're going to have as hard a time to get the fan base behind that pick. I mean, I think they might have liked Fields better as a fan base, but certainly there was a lot of anybody but Mac Jones talk coming out of San Francisco. I think that fan base felt that like that was
Right.
at best a minor move forward, and it's at what cost kind of a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think they knew it had to be a quarterback. It had to be one of those two that they were going to be happy with. I'm sure some would have been more happy with a Justin Fields in that spot, but I don't think any are going to be disappointed that it was Trey Lance instead of a Mac Jones. I think they'll be pleased that at least they got Trey Lance in that spot. That being said, what I have heard from those who have actually worked with Trey Lance and know a little bit about him, and is just endlessly I hear about how smart he is and how great he is on the chalkboard, even with only that many passes.
Sure.
He's just already just a whiz, and that's something that some of the best, that's what they do, is they're so quick to diagnose defenses because they've got very high football IQ, as you talk about, and if he's able to do that, and he's got some of those traits that he can, because obviously you have to have some level of talent to make it at the NFL level. You can't just be football smarts. I mean, otherwise you'd have tons of players that there's tons of people out there that have great football IQ, but you still have to have the physical skills and traits and abilities to do those kind of things out there. It doesn't matter how smart you are, but when you can marry those things together, then you can get away with a guy that is really raw that you can develop. Like I said, you got to develop them the right way.
Absolutely.
So
welcome on, JC. Welcome on, Hannah. Good to see you guys. Hannah, it's been a minute. Hope you're doing okay.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks. Now we'll go back to Kit. So that was 3. So now we'll talk about the Falcons. You and I had talked about Justin Fields going back home to Georgia. Might be a good play there.
Right.
We end up going with what you and I have probably called the best player in the draft. In fact, the only player that we made a superstar X factor in our draft class, and that's Kyle Pitts. What do you think about that pick, and what do you think that says about their commitment to Matt Ryan in the short term?
Well, I think it says a lot. Just real quick back to Fields. That's the second time he's been snubbed by Georgia now.
That's right.
First when he was a player for Georgia, and he gets overlooked for Fromm, who ends up being not even close to as good as Fields as a quarterback. And then he comes to Ohio State and becomes what he becomes, and now he gets snubbed by. Arguably should have gone in that 4 spot. What a great spot to pick him up and be future of the franchise. But at the same time, I totally get Atlanta's perspective there. Matt Ryan is certainly not, and he's not at the end of his. He's not losing anything yet. I think he's still got a lot. He's still got a lot of good football in front of him. Very well developed, and he's a top tier type quarterback where it has the potential to be that. So getting that guy a Pitts to put in that offense, he absolutely says that they have confidence in him, that that he can take them where they want to go, and realistically they were just there. I mean, when Kyle Shanahan was there, I mean, what was that, 2017? That just happened. So that's that's not that long ago. He obviously can do that. He's got to have the right team around him, and they're making the effort to do that. I think that's the right move from that perspective, especially since, you could make the argument that was the best actual player in the draft. I mean, yes, when you weigh in quarterback value, just from a positional value of how important that player is going to be to your team, he can't beat a quarterback when it comes to those trait guys. But Kyle Pitts, in terms of just straight up football talent, is the best player in this draft. I mean, there's really no question on that front. And yeah, I mean, he's the type of guy that, you don't often hear this, but this is the type of guy where they're already starting to talk about, like, this guy could be a Hall of Famer, potentially down the road. And you don't talk about that guy when you're looking at drafting him. You talk about that after he's been in the NFL for a while and starting to prove that. Now he still has to prove it. He still has to do it at the NFL level. I get that, but he has so much of what it might, what it would take to get to that kind of a level, and he could do that very quickly in the right situation. And I think having Matt Ryan throw to him is going to help that. So no, I definitely like that pick at 4. I think Miami was sadly disappointed. Because it was interesting. Cincinnati's pick was such a Cincinnati pick. If anything, was. Obviously I'm sure they might have thought long and hard about Pitts if he had been there, but you almost felt like Chase was the pick for them all along. And nothing more than, we'll reunite him with his quarterback from, look at the success they had in college days. So clearly here in Cincinnati, that'll work again, which is just a very backwards way of thinking about this. It's not really how it works. Yes, they can have chemistry and that may show up on the field, but at the same time, weapons is not at all what Burrow needed. Burrow needs protection up front. And we've been saying this all along. And we thought free agency, surely they're going to address the offensive line. And they make one move that is a low tier, not even great upgrade at offensive line.
A veteran that got cut from his team. Yes.
Right. So you're just like, I mean, you thought, surely you're going to spend a lot of money on somebody or go get somebody really good. They don't. Then you're like, okay, well, surely you're going to go get the best tackle or maybe guard. I mean, they could have gone for the number 1 guard off the board and still been in a better position. And they don't. And, and it was kind of interesting in our conversation. If I'm the Bengals, it doesn't matter to me if it's Slater, if it's Sewell, whoever your guy is, pick your guy, but make it an offensive lineman. Like don't pick this guy, Chase, because he's the the sexy weapon that we're gonna throw out there on the field that has this chemistry already with Burrow, because that'll make us better. Like, no, that doesn't make you better. That makes you an unbalanced football team, because you've got so much talent in the skill positions that, you're not really replicating, on the line. So it's very interesting pick. That to me, in some ways, although not really a surprise, was the most head scratcher. The first of the head scratching moves. There were a couple of them along the way.
The Cowboys
we can always talk about
as well. Yeah.
Yes, they were a very Jones pick with the number. I guess they moved back to 12.
Yes.
To pick. So the trade, I totally get the trade. The 2 corners that they coveted off the board, they desperately needed defensive help. We saw that when we played them. I mean, we tore them apart. And that's because
we were really clicking.
Yeah, and we just absolutely demolished them. Their defense just looked like a sieve. And so they needed help on all levels. And then, I think in the most Jerry Jones fashion possible, he goes out and drafts a linebacker. And some people say he's the best linebacker in the draft, and I just don't agree. The guy's very fast, but he's kind of like Owa on the edge rush, where speed is not everything. And in fact, what's not that I don't think Owa could be good, and I actually think a little bit less of Parsons than Owa in some ways. But the problem with a linebacker is the reason why he was as highly drafted as he was is because he's so fast, and the speed masks his lack of reading and instincts, which is actually much more important. Speed is a second tier linebacker trait. Instincts and reading skills, football smarts, and seeing the plays happen in front of you is way more important. And in fact, the best linebackers in the NFL, like your Luke Kuechly's, those are not the fastest guys. I mean, it's not because Wagner is so fast or Kuechly is so fast. It's because they have incredible reaction timing and instincts and knowing what's coming they can put themselves in a spot before anybody has even diagnosed what's going on, because they know what's coming. And then putting themselves in that spot makes it seem like they're super fast, but they're not super fast. They're reading it before anybody else, and they're getting there before anybody else has a chance. And like they're, most of the rest of the your normal linebackers are still like reaction 1 and trying to start to move, and they're already like reaction 2 and 3 and starting to diagnose how it's developing. And like that's
for sure.
That's the difference.
Absolutely.
So
speaking of Jones, it was funny. I don't know if you're watching currently, but Mac Jones did in fact go to the Patriots just now. Bill Belichick gets his guy for being patient at 15. So we'll see what that looks like.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because in some ways, Mac Jones, if you want to look at him, I don't think he has the ceiling, but in some ways he's almost a 1-for-1. What kind of Tom Brady was coming out. So if they can develop him to that level, look out, that could be really special. I do think he's got some, some really nice things. He does read well. He's got some nice instincts. But I don't think he's got elite trait type stuff, which is why I didn't see him early. I think that's a good pick for the Patriots. That's a very Belichickian pick, so also not surprising. Well, and of course, him having the patience to wait for it to drop to him, I think good move on his part if that's the guy he wanted. So and
it'd be interesting to see what they do, how early they commit to him, because you do not run the same offense for Mac Jones that you run for Cam Newton.
No, you don't. But on the other hand, you do run a very similar offense to what you ran with Tom Brady. And sure. That's because he's just not a mobile quarterback. So you run a very similar.
Still there.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of the pieces, coaching and stuff that was there while Tom Brady was so successful. And it's not like they don't have a long storied history of how to make this successful.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's rattle off these next couple ones. Just give me just a couple of comments on each. So then, Miami is patient. They sit there. They take potentially the most dynamic player in the draft, Waddle at 6. What do you think about that one?
A great wide receiver. I mean, arguably some like him better than Chase, but great wide receiver. He's going to be a dynamic weapon for them, and they needed a weapon, so not surprising. Their pick all along was going to be best wide receiver or best. Or Pitts, really. Pitts or best wide receiver. So because you imagine Pitts and Gesicki matched up, what a pairing that would have been. But best weapon, offensive weapon, whatever they could get their hands on, and Waddle is the obvious pick. So
Indeed. So then Detroit stays patient. Their brand new GM and their brand new head coach, Dan Campbell. Of course, it was funny to see John Dorsey in their war room.
Right.
They're going to go ahead and get the stud left tackle out of Oregon, Penei Sewell. It seems like a really smart pick for a first-time GM.
Yeah, no, they're cheering. I mean, you saw them so excited in their war room. They didn't think he was going to drop to them, and thanks to now, I think they probably had some suspicions knowing how the Bengals like to draft and the things that they do. They don't do the logical. This is what you should do to you got Burrow that probably want to protect him. Well, anyway, so they correctly predicted that the Bengals were going to do a very Bengals thing, and sure enough, here we are with best tackle in the draft, arguably, and I'll buy off on that. I think he actually is the best. I on the ESPN they were talking about how give him another year potentially. He's a number 2, number 3 potentially in a draft pick.
Sure. Well, he opted out this year.
Yeah, exactly. But if he had that extra year, potentially he goes there because he just was that good. And I agree. His tape was really quite good, and the Bengals are gonna really, I think, regret not taking him. I think that Detroit really wins that, and being patient in that spot. Great move. Well done by that brain trust they have put together there in Detroit. And hopefully that works out. As far as teams that I've always kind of harbored a little bit of, I've always kind of liked them a little bit.
Sure.
Not that I'm a fan or anything, but the long suffering, I kind of feel a little bit of their pain. I know what it's like. And you kind of like Detroit a little bit.
Got that Great Lakes Classic every year.
Yeah, exactly. It's the thing. So it's like
fourth preseason game that means nothing.
Right, exactly. But at the same time, there's a little bit of nostalgia there. So good for Detroit, and I'm glad to see that they've seemed to. I was really questioning, was this brain trust going to work? I mean, more NFL 9s altogether. Is there going to be any kind of consensus, or what is it going to look like? But so far, so good. So, I think that's absolutely a great pick for them. And obviously, I think the immediate reaction is obviously they think Goff's their guy.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they take a quarterback there.
At least for now, for sure.
Yep.
For sure. Welcome into Marion. Hope you're well, brother. Good to hear from you. He says draft is crazy. I would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely
so
is.
8 and 9, we kind of get our first. I don't think there was any chance that either of these guys were going to make it to 26. Browns would have had to move up significantly if they really, really wanted to have Horner Surtain. So they go 8-9 to Carolina and Denver. Your two, bar none, top cover corners, going to places that need help on the back end. Your thoughts on the two corners at 8 and 9?
Well, my first thought is that Dallas is over there going, because I think they were highly coveted, very highly coveted, one of the two. I don't think they would have minded either of those guys in that 10 spot, which is of course why they traded back. Obviously a little earlier than I think most people thought they were going to go, because the most mocks had the first corner coming off the board right around that 10 spot to Dallas, which of course we knew that Jerry was coveting a top cover corner. But at the same time, for talent and for what they provide, I understand the picks. I think they're good picks for both of those teams. And not surprising to see them go back to back. Just, there's so little to split hairs on, the tape between those two. Both excellent cover guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So then, as you said, it started to get a little wild. I think Dallas, not necessarily panicked, but they were pissed, I guess, that both of their guys weren't there.
That's right.
They're obviously not taking a quarterback there, so they're probably trying to get whatever they can to move back. They found an in-division helper there with the Eagles, which is crazy.
Such a rarity. I mean, especially now, it only took the third round.
And I was going to say, and 2 picks, but also to jump yet a third division opponent. So
that was the other really interesting part.
Philly getting ahead of New York for kind of the last of the top offensive guys, and Devontae Smith is going to go pair up with one of his old college teammates in Jalen Hurts now, who by all accounts is the quarterback for Nick Sirianni, first-year coach in Philly. So what are your thoughts about Devontae Smith at 10 to the Eagles?
Yeah, well, that trade in general, what a wild, from a division that really struggled, like just had a really terrible year with some, pretty storied franchises in that division, and generally tend to be pretty good teams. Just awful. And it's very bizarre. Normally you don't see this interdivision trades, just because, especially if you are going to see that, there's usually a bit of a tax there, but only, I know it's only 2 picks, but jumped, but so you're basically taking a bet that, okay, we think the Eagles are going to be worse than the Giants, so therefore we'll let the Eagles. It's this weird kind of calculus to is this going to shift the balance of power? Or are we thinking that the Eagles are kind of in a worse position, then we'll expect the Giants are more ready to make the move in? If you go by just the results, I don't think that's a bad move, but I don't know that that's safe to say. The Eagles had a lot of injury history, plus Wentz was just atrocious. So very interesting there. And then the question became, do you get, what do you jump for? Is it for, the second tackle, just very surprised that Slater's still on the board, and you go get them especially with their line injury that they had? Or are you jumping the Giants because you're like, the Giants are weapon hungry, and there's only really one top wide receiver left on the board. And obviously there's not even a tight end or any other weapon that you would consider until the second round. So really the only thing you're going to get weapon wise is going to be a wide receiver, and that's worthy of a first round pick, especially not one that you traded up for to get, a third, coming in the draft tomorrow. So there's really only one option there. It only could be, you really only saw it was a Slater or is it Smith, and of course they go to take away the weapon that the Giants desperately wanted. So a very interesting move there. And then of course Jerry at 12 makes such a classic move for him, and I almost feel bad for Dallas fans with that pick, because I don't think that's going to be a good play for them. I don't think that'll help at all.
And similarly, I think that the Giants wanted Smith, and as soon as he wasn't there anymore, They chose to go back, and so we get our first big trade up. The Bears come up from 20 to 11. They give up a lot to do it, including next year's first rounder.
That's right.
And they get our boy Justin Fields. So Matt Nagy, he's going to be coaching Justin Fields, honorary member of Nagy on Sports, Matt Nagy.
That's right.
No relation that we know of. I'm sure if you go
That's
far
right.
back, we are.
Yeah.
From the same village or whatever in Hungary. But in any event, how do you like the Bears? The Bears coming up for Justin Fields, the Field Museum himself.
That's right.
Downtown Chicago. What do you think?
Well, I'll push pause on that just a minute. I mean, if you go
Okay.
far enough back, I'm sure you could find ties to Bernie Kosar. He's Hungarian too. So
That's
I'm just
true.
saying. I mean, that's good enough for me. All right.
We're going to be related. Yeah.
But all right. So when we talking about that move, couple of instant thoughts. Like for Justin Fields, you kind of felt really good about it, but you also kind of worry a little bit about it. But mostly I think it's very positive. I like this move. For Justin Fields in particular. You don't want to see him go behind Mac Jones just because he's just a better quarterback. A lot of folks, like we were talking about, saw him as the number 2 in this draft. And obviously I agree with that assessment. He's always been 1 and 2 with pretty much since the beginning. It's been Fields and Lawrence just back and forth, and then the first time that really doesn't play out is with this draft, which drafts can get interesting. It's just the way the way these things happen. GMs and front offices just fall in love with their guy, whoever that is, and then these weird things start to happen. But anyway, so that beside the point. We get into this move, and similar to Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. Matt Nagy's very much this is a do or die. They needed a quarterback. The Trubisky experiment had clearly failed, and they'd moved on, and now they're like, all right, and they know Dalton is not the answer. He was clearly hadn't been the answer for a team, really since he played for the Bengals. And it's funny. I put out I have a quarterback analysis where I call it the Dalton line. Just good enough to hang around with a team, but not good enough to take them where they want to go. Like he's really the mediocre quarterback of the NFL. Good, but not.
Yeah, he's a great bridge quarterback. Yeah.
Yep. Good, but not special. And unfortunately for the Bengals, they're one of the slowest organizations to make a change when they recognize that, all right, well, we're stuck on this guy. And that's how they ended up with Dalton for so many years. Anyway, that beside the point. The Bears, they really needed the quarterback. Was this going to be Mac Jones? Knew it had to be a quarterback. They had way too much capital spent. You don't spend a first round draft pick next year plus a fifth and a fourth next year also or something.
Yeah.
So huge amount of draft capital. I mean, that's expensive for that pick for that number 11. And then you had one of the two, so the only two left on the board that are worth that much capital, and so you have to be happy for Jones or for Fields, for Fields that he gets picked before Jones. You also have to be happy just for Bears. For the Bears fans, I love that uniform. It's very much a classic look. I love the city also. That the city of Chicago is a great city. They have a great fan base. It's a very, very storied franchise. The number 2, the second ever NFL franchise. The Chicago Staleys, I believe they were originally, but just such a rich history. Really great teams. I mean, they're one of kind of in the pantheon, if you will, of just classic. This is the NFL type franchises, which of course the Browns are in too. But that's just truth. But anyway, so I like that for Fields. I think if any of the quarterbacks in this draft had a real potential to turn that franchise, from a bit of a dim recent history around, I think Fields absolutely could be that guy. Now they got to go about it the right way. And they need to protect him, and they need to make sure that he is, put into a good system to help develop him in a productive way. But I think that could happen, and I'm happy for Fields that although he did start to drop only to 11, that's not terribly far down the draft, and definitely not. I mean, it felt really good to just I knew he obviously it was just flat ridiculous, but to have Sims and his ridiculous comments about him going 32nd. Are you kidding me? What?
Stop
like, there's no, no,
but
stop.
People talked about him all day, so he got his wish.
Right. Well, and the other thing that's just standard, that's just what those type of people do.
Absolutely.
But the other thing, especially for all of the really undeserved negative attention that he received, and we already kind of talked about this. Some of some of the things that were, I mean, the stuff that was released about him that is quite literally criminal. Whoever went out there and is releasing medical, stuff about him to the public is just, I mean, that's straight up illegal. And just really feel bad for the guy. So good for him. Good for Chicago. Yeah, good for Chicago, and I think that has a very promising potential. And I'd like to see the Chicago Bears be a good team again, because the NFL prospers. Sure. Just like when the Browns are good, when the Bears are good, the NFL prospers.
No, I'm absolutely. I will adopt the Bears as my end. I've got a couple friends who are big Bears fan. I'll go for a Browns Bears Super Bowl right now. Heck yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd be in on that. All right. Well, we already talked a little bit about Parsons at 12. So the Cowboys, again, they can't stop anybody. So they take yet another linebacker along with Jalen Smith and Van Der Esch. And they probably still won't be able to stop anybody, but Jerry being Jerry there for sure at 12.
That's right.
So the Chargers then take Slater, the second tackle, off the board. Smart there. Protect your young quarterback.
They're doing what they should have been doing.
Yeah, you got a bunch of weapons. You got a good young defense anchored by a Bosa.
Realistically,
linebacker from last year is a great player. Derwin James coming back. You've got studs at all three levels of your defense in LA. So Slater's just a no-brainer, easy knock it out of the park pick there for the Chargers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, they're definitely ran that card into the podium. I mean, they couldn't believe he was still there. When they were on the board. I mean, I think they probably go offensive line either way, but to have a guy like Slater still there, I mean, that may have actually been the guy they were targeting, and literally first on their draft board, much like we had with Wills, dropping to us at 10, and we were all cheering and being so excited. Last year, I mean, that is, so rare to see something that, because it just has to go the right way. And it starts with that pick at number 5 with them not taking Sewell there, so that then Slater doesn't get picked up, and, because it's just a little bit of that domino effect. And once you get down the road, those little minor changes in the draft can make such a big difference for teams. Especially, I love seeing a team take advantage of that, because that's a huge value pick, especially when it happens to line up with a big particular need where you got to protect Herbert. He showed so much potential in that first year, but really, if he had been better protected with that offensive line, much like Baker, where he had all that potential, but you bring in a really, really good offensive line to protect him, like we saw this last year. Look what happens. It's like, wow, this is, obviously he had the talent, and there was obviously, there were doubters along the way, but you put a really good offensive line and develop that in front of him, and really a guy like him can really flourish in that. And I'm excited for the Chargers and that fan base, because that is something that that really is a very smart, value-centric pick, and they should be extremely excited about what they're going to get out of Slater in that spot.
That's your hometown team.
No, actually, LA doesn't have any teams there. They don't have a fan base here, other than the Rams-ish. They're not a football town. It's weird.
It is weird.
It's so weird.
The NFL rammed it in there, but they did.
Yeah, it's not a football town. Baseball.
So the Jets at 14 with the Seattle pick that they got for Jamal Adams. They go ahead and take Elijah Vera Tucker, who I've seen some people say he can play inside, he can play outside. They've got him listed as a guard. You're going to protect your asset. You're going to protect your number 2 pick. So,
yep.
Seems like a good chalky pick there for the Jets.
Yeah, he was the best. He was the best guard on the board. He obviously played tackle, but I think he projects as a guard at the NFL level, and I expect that's probably where they're going to try to plug him in. But no, I mean, I think that's another just solid pick. That's what they need to do.
Yeah. So anyway, we talked a little bit about Mac Jones. Bill Belichick, patience, gets his guy at 15. We'll see what that turns into. So now we start to get to at 16 guys who could have potentially have been there depending on how things gone at 26. We didn't talk much about Zavin Collins or whatever, but he goes to the Cardinals at 16.
Interesting. So these are all new to me because I've
Okay,
been
well, there you
talking this
go. Well,
whole time.
I'm
So
revealing them to you live. So you get
yes.
Zavin Collins to the Cardinals there, kind of that bulked up pass rusher.
Ironically, that's a very, very Cardinals pick in their own way. I think they were very much looking for one of those top two corners too. Neither of them dropped to them, so they're like, well, I guess we're going to take a defender. But interesting pick. But in that defense, he might be good. But I'm just glad that the Zavin Collins talk to
the
Browns is finally over, and we don't have to worry about this anymore because mean he can be a very good player, but I don't see him as a fit for the Browns.
Well, you're going to love a couple of these other ones next. So then at 17, Mike Mayock and Johnny Boy, they go with Alex Leatherwood, who you probably could have had in the middle or the end of the second round, which is just perfect for the Browns. Take another not player that the Browns wanted. Alex Leatherwood, the tackle out of Alabama, going to the Raiders.
Yeah, no, so I love seeing a run on offensive linemen. That obviously for Browns fans, that is exactly what you want to see. Yep. That is huge. That is dropping talent, very coveted high-level talent that potentially is going to push that right back to us. And I'm saying, come on back. And that's great. But yeah, what a Mayock and Gruden.
He only takes guys from Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State. He's like, well, they were the best in college. So, all right, at 18, Miami takes the hometown kid, Jalen Phillips, first guy off the board, who maybe the Browns might have targeted at 26.
Certainly.
Some elite pass rush traits. Can he stay healthy? Problem with concussions. Your initial thoughts about Phillips? I know is somebody that we had mocked to the Browns at 26.
Yeah, certainly. If he had made it to 26, that would have been huge value. I think that's a good place for him as far as like where to pick him in the draft. I think that's
18.
Probably about the right value pick point, or maybe. But as the first edge, maybe a few picks early, but not anything I would constitute a reach.
Yeah.
He's definitely got elite traits, elite talent. He's the best pure pass rusher in this draft. Really, really talented football player and has been for a long time. And really just the injury question mark, but that's why he wasn't a top 10 pick, and he very much should have or could have been if not for that injury history and kind of how he retired from football and then ends up with Miami, that whole deal. Obviously, I thought much higher of him, even though for whatever reason Rousseau for a long period was, oh, this is the best guy out of Miami, and then but then Phillips finally, I think, wiser head prevailed and started to identify that Phillips probably the better pick, and deservedly the best or the first edge to go off the board. So that kind of made sense, and kind of where it starts to make sense with where it's happening in this draft.
Absolutely. All right, so here you're gonna have to call your boy and find out what's going on. The Washington football team at 19 takes Jamin Davis at 19.
Oh, he's going to be mad.
We liked him at 89 for the Browns.
No, to be fair, Jamin Davis, as far
he's
as
a physical freak.
He is. And they did need a linebacker, because I did talk to him about wanting a linebacker. So that is on their wish list. So I understand
JOK. They took him over JOK.
Right, and I would say JOK is a better player, but then again, if you are plugging him in as a safety linebacker hybrid, he's a better player, and that doesn't work in all defenses, which I don't believe that's really something that they look to do with that defense, with the way they rotate guys on their defensive line, and they'll play 5 guys across that line in some of their defensive lineups, just because they have so much. Obviously they weren't taking an edge rusher. They needed, second level, third level help. But not the. not the best linebacker on the board, in my opinion. Obviously, some folks, and this is such a wild draft in terms of people were all over the board on, where folks, should be or should go based on how they evaluated in such a hard year to evaluate talent. And just there's been a lot of talk about how because there wasn't this, because there wasn't the
combine and the
combine. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. There wasn't the combine
and stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, but what that also takes away is kind of all of the NFL people in one place, and all kind of this sets up a little bit of a chance for this think factory and group think going on. Yeah. So, and that's how you get like all these people that everybody thinks similar things of, and there just wasn't that this year, other than just people calling each other and reaching out to their contacts. But then you also don't know where people are going to go because you don't know what teams are thinking. So it makes some very interesting dynamics, in particular this year for the draft. So then you got some. Yeah, so it's interesting to see how that all plays out. So obviously they had him higher on their board than some other guys, and I like him as a linebacker. I don't like him in the first round. I think he's probably second round, but if that's their guy, maybe he pans out. He is a very instinctual linebacker, though, at least. So they're getting a guy that I feel is a better pick than Parsons. So they're doing better than Dallas.
True. There you go.
So again another divisional rival. I see that as a better pick. If Dallas had gone with Jamin Davis, I would have been much higher on that pick than the Parsons pick personally.
Sure. And then one final one that'll catch us up, and then we'll take a short commercial break, use the restroom, get another beverage or whatever, and then we'll hop back on here a few picks before the Browns come on to wrap it up. But the Giants did finally pick at 20, and they're going to go Kadarius Toney, spark plug wide receiver out of Florida, who had just a crazy year with Kyle Trask this year. So, yeah, they don't get Devontae Smith at 11 because he gets taken, but Toney's pretty darn good player to put out there and give yourself a chance to see if Daniel Jones is your guy.
Yeah, I know they wanted a weapon. I know they feel like they traded back so that to a better spot for value for a guy, but this still feels like a reach to me. Toney, early second value to me was where I would put him. Not that he's not talented, he's good. It's just such a good wide receiver class and so long. And they could have waited on him and potentially picked him up with that second round pick, or moved around into that earlier second round and still got him for a value. Maybe got a better pick for their team here. Because of the way this wide receiver class, I think they felt the pressure of the weapons going off the board, and I think this was a passion pick. This was a little bit of a reach and a bit of a reactionary to the way things are happening. And that is something that I'm so happy to say the Browns just do not do, and that's something of eras past the Browns used to do all the time, where it'd be like, oh no, our guys are going. These are the guys who wanted the target, and now we're going to pick just somebody who's a huge reach, and you're like, here we go.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have taken him over Moore or Bateman for sure.
Oh no, absolutely not. I would argue there's
both
easily
Moores.
three.
Rondale Moore before.
Right. No, I would say there's easily 3, 4, 5 wide receivers that you could argue are a better pick at that spot. I would say 2 of those picks, both Moore and Bateman, probably don't feel like reaches at that spot, but all of the rest of them feel like a reach.
For sure.
Even though some of them I would pick even before Toney. So
right. So George popped on, Karen popped on, known as Review popped on. We appreciate them being on.
Yeah, welcome.
Kev pops on. Kev Lipnos pops on, and he says, "Kit, I'm going to be going to the Browns-Chargers game this coming season. Would be cool to meet up and create our own dog pound if you could score some tickets." So
yeah, if I'm still here now, I am actively trying to move to Seattle.
True. That's true.
So that's why I spend all my time out in Seattle. My family's all up there. My daughter's up there. So it just my job is what's keeping me in LA
area for now.
Area for now. But I'm trying to get hired by Delta is what is my current aspirations are. Right. So we'll see. So we'll see how that works out. But if I am still here And the Browns are I am not passing up on an opportunity like that. I'm just saying I'll absolutely spring for tickets for that.
There you go. There you go. All right, so we'll pop out of here for a little bit. Again, we'll hop back on, maybe pick 25 or so, unless the Browns decide to trade up, and then we'll panic and jump back on just so that the stream isn't a bajillion hours long. So appreciate everybody for being on. And those of you watching later, we really appreciate you. We love our subscribers. You guys are the best. Again, we will pop on a little bit later to talk about and instantly react to the Browns take it 26, unless they, of course, jump up a little bit earlier. So we'll get out of here very quickly. We'll see you very soon. Go.